The polished mahogany table reflected the soft glow of the chandeliers, a picture of calm elegance in the presidential palace's dining hall. President Ibrahim Traore, finally settling down for his evening meal after a demanding day, brought the first forkful of rice and fried chicken to his lips. He'd been discussing the upcoming water project in the northern region, a testament to his administration's progress, with his close advisors. Economy Minister Calaboy spoke of eager villagers, and Traore himself had just mused about hitting their ambitious development goals. Subscribe. We are already preparing the next hot issue for you. Then, the world tilted. The moment his tongue registered the taste, a subtle anomaly, his body seized. A cold dread, like ice in his veins, preceded the searing fire that ignited in his throat. It quickly intensified, transforming into a crushing weight upon his chest, a warmth radiating outwards, spreading with terrifying speed through his entire being. His vision wavered, the faces of his advisors blurring into indistinct forms, and a high-pitched ringing began to echo in his ears. "Mr. President, are you all right?" Interior Minister Kabur's voice seemed distant, muffled by the internal din. Traore couldn't respond. His hand, reaching instinctively for his water glass, trembled uncontrollably, overturning it with a clatter that sounded deafening in the sudden, eerie silence. Everyone in the dining room had frozen, their expressions shifting from polite attention to dawning horror. Something was catastrophically wrong. The president has been poisoned. Kabur's shout ripped through the stillness, jolting everyone into a frenzy of motion. Guards burst into the room, ministers surged to their feet, and a cacophony of panicked voices erupted. Security Chief Ouedraogo's commands sliced through the chaos: "Seal the palace. No one in, no one out. This is an attempt on his life." Traore fought to retain a semblance of awareness, but the encroaching haze was relentless. Ouedraogo was suddenly at his side, a voice whispering urgently, "Hold on, Mr. President. Help is on the way." Within minutes, the palace health team arrived, their movements swift and precise. Dr. Zongo, his face taut with concern, checked pupils, felt for a pulse. "It's chemical poisoning," he stated, his voice tense and low. "He needs to be taken to the hospital immediately." The last sensation Traore registered before succumbing to the encroaching darkness was Dr. Zongo's dire pronouncement: "The substance is spreading quickly. We are losing precious time." Heavy security measures transformed the special section of the Burkina Faso Central Military Hospital. Corridors swarmed with armed soldiers, creating an impenetrable cordon. Inside a dedicated room, President Ibrahim Traore waged a silent battle for his life, an array of machines diligently monitoring his every vital sign. Outside the hospital, the news had already taken root and blossomed into a national crisis. Hundreds gathered, their faces etched with worry, their prayers echoing in the streets. On social media, the hashtag Pray for Traore surged, becoming a global phenomenon. Voices in the crowd offered their own interpretations. "It's the work of external powers," some cried, asserting that Traore was too great a threat to their perceived independence. "No, it's internal betrayal." Others countered, their words hinting at treachery lurking within the palace's very walls. Regardless of the prevailing theory, Burkina Faso's youthful leader was in a critical state, and the entire nation held its breath, awaiting a sign of hope. In the hospital corridor, the inner circle, Prime Minister Dio, Security Chief Ouedraogo, and Interior Minister Kabor, stood in a grim huddle. "What's his status?" Dio asked, his voice heavy with apprehension. "Critical but stable," Dr. Zongo reported, extending a file. "The substance is highly sophisticated. Laboratory analysis is ongoing, but this wasn't brewed by an amateur. It's clearly a professional act." Ouedraogo's voice dropped to a near whisper. "An attack, from within. Who handled his meal? Who was at the table?" "We must remain calm," Prime Minister Dio interjected, his gaze sweeping over the anxious faces. "Panic and accusations will only destabilize us further. The priority is the president's survival and the country's stability." Kabor nodded, but his resolve was clear. The investigation must commence immediately. Every soul in the palace is under scrutiny, from the culinary staff to his closest advisors, from the security detail to the household servants. Ouedraogo's expression tightened. "I fear that includes us." A sudden, chilling silence fell upon the corridor. The three men exchanged glances, the weight of a shattered trust hanging heavy in the air. This was a crisis of profound magnitude. Action is required, Dio declared, breaking the silence. But who can lead an inquiry when suspicion casts such a long shadow over everyone? The palace police? The army? National intelligence? Ouedraogo shook his head. None of them are untouched. There are those loyal, and those who might be, otherwise. We need someone from outside. But who can we trust? Kabore wondered aloud, the question hanging unanswered. At that very moment, in a modest suburban dwelling in Ouagadougou, a 63-year-old man named Maurice Sankara listened to the radio news. Just 3 years prior, one of President Traore's initial decrees had removed Sankara from his long-held position as Burkina Faso's intelligence chief. The announcer confirmed the news of President Traore's grave condition. Sankara took a deep, measured breath. There was a complex history between them. Traore had accused him of collaborating with foreign powers, resulting in his dismissal and a year of house arrest, from which he had only recently gained partial freedom, though still under surveillance. The sudden ring of his phone interrupted his thoughts. It was a former colleague. Maurice, the voice urged, they're going to reach out to you. Be ready. Who? Sankara asked, surprised. Those in the palace. They'll call you to investigate the poisoning. Sankara scoffed. Don't be absurd. Traore despises me. He branded me a traitor. Perhaps, the voice replied, but right now, he has no one he truly trusts inside. There's only one reason he might consider you. Your known animosity towards him. If even you can prove you weren't involved, he can identify the true culprit. Maurice Sankara's prediction proved true. The following morning, a knock sounded at his door. Outside, 2 vehicles from the presidential convoy waited. A young officer informed him, Mr. Sankara, there are people who wish to see you. Sankara nodded, expecting this. He dressed quickly and stepped into the waiting cars. The convoy drove directly to the military hospital. In the hospital corridor, Prime Minister Dio, Security Chief Ouedraogo, and Interior Minister Kabore awaited. Their faces bore a complex mix of concern, suspicion, and a hint of embarrassment. Mr. Sankara, Dio began, extending his hand, thank you for coming. Sankara did not take his hand. Did I have a choice, Mr. Prime Minister? I was once accused of treason. Now, if I understand correctly, you require my assistance. The country requires your assistance, Kabore corrected. The president is in a critical state, and someone sought to end his life. Someone from the inside, Ouedraogo added, emphasizing the chilling implication. The food was prepared and served within the palace walls. Everyone is a suspect. Sankara offered a cold look. And why me? You kept me in isolation for 3 years. Traore shattered my career and reputation. Precisely why, Dio affirmed. If even one of the president's greatest adversaries chooses to help save him, we stand a chance of finding the real perpetrator. Sankara considered the opportunity. It was a perfect moment for a form of retribution. Perhaps, if Traore's well-being was truly compromised. Yet, this was a sinister attack, a clandestine act that even he wouldn't wish upon arrival. What happened? Sankara asked, his voice firm. Tell me the details. Yesterday evening, during an official dinner, the president displayed signs of distress after the first few mouthfuls, Kabore recounted. Laboratory analyses are ongoing, but initial results suggest an exotic and uncommon substance. You will have full authority in this operation, Dio stated. You will have access to all records, personnel, and security camera footage. However, you will report the results to us first, Ouedraogo finished. We do not wish to create panic. Sankara nodded in understanding. May I see the president? The 3 men exchanged surprised glances. Why? Kabore asked suspiciously. Because I want to understand the nature of the substance, Sankara replied. The symptoms, its effects, its severity. This will provide insight into its type and possible origin. Under intense security measures, Sankara was admitted to the special treatment room. Ibrahim Traore lay in bed, pale, connected to machines, and utterly vulnerable. The very man who had removed him from power and subjected him to isolation 3 years ago now fought for his existence. Give us 10 minutes, Sankara instructed the medical team. When the room was clear, Sankara slowly approached the bedside. He observed Ibrahim Traore's face. His eyes were closed, but his chest rose and fell faintly. He was still with them. You know, Mr. President, Sankara began slowly, his voice a low murmur. I never liked you. When you removed me from office, I wished for your removal. But not like this. He paused, lost in thought. It is more honorable to confront an adversary openly than to strike from the shadows. The monitors beeped steadily. Traore's condition was stable but grave. Who afflicted you, and why? Sankara murmured. I will uncover the truth. Not for you, but for my own principles. Sankara reviewed Traore's medical reports. The substance was rapid in its effects, but not immediately fatal. This was a deliberate choice. Not to end a life, but to incapacitate. Just then, Traore's eyes fluttered open slightly. He struggled to focus, but recognized Sankara. You, he whispered, his voice weak. So it was you. I did not afflict you, Sankara stated quickly. I am here to ensure your well-being. Why? Traore managed to ask, barely speaking. Because whoever did this also harms Burkina Faso, Sankara replied. And I do not betray my country. Traore's eyes closed once more, his consciousness fading. Sankara took a deep breath and left the room. In the corridor, Ouedraogo waited. What did you ascertain? The substance is quite complex, Sankara said thoughtfully. It must have been prepared in a laboratory by a skilled chemist. The symptoms are specific. First, a burning sensation in the throat, then general weakness, trembling, and mental haziness. What does this imply? Ouedraogo pressed. The intention was not to cause a total collapse, Sankara explained. If it were, the president would be gone already. This is a warning. A message. Ouedraogo frowned. From whom? And why? That is what I need to investigate within the palace, Sankara concluded. And I must begin immediately. Provide me with information about everyone. The culinary staff, servers, security personnel, advisors, cleaning crews. I require every detail. We've prepared the files, Ouedraogo said, handing him a tablet. Here is detailed information on 342 individuals working in the palace. The east wing of the presidential palace had been transformed into a temporary investigation center. Maurice Sankara, flanked by 2 former intelligence officers he had personally selected, individuals who had remained loyal and whom Traore had not dismissed, meticulously examined files around a large table. Now, Sankara announced, I first want to understand the food preparation process in the palace. How is food handled, from its origin to the president's table, step by step? Ouedraogo had the palace chef, Bamana, brought in. The chef stood before them, his hands trembling slightly. Mr. Bamana, Sankara said in a gentle voice, do not be apprehensive. We do not believe you were involved. We simply seek to comprehend the procedures. The chef, visibly relieved, nodded. I have served in the palace for 14 years, sir. I have prepared meals for 3 presidents. President Traore's meal was prepared as always. Rice, fried chicken, and vegetables, his preferred dish. Where do the ingredients originate? Sankara asked. From the palace's own farm, the chef replied. For security, all food is specially cultivated, and every shipment undergoes inspection. And how does the prepared meal reach the table? By the servers, the chef explained. Yesterday evening, it was Suli who brought the food to the president's table. A trusted server of 8 years. Sankara made notes. And who was at the president's table last night? Interior Minister Kabor, Economy Minister Kulibi, Security Chief Ouedraogo, and Foreign Minister Zeta, the chef listed, and, of course, President Traore. Sankara dismissed the chef and turned to Ouedraogo. Locate server Suli Main immediately. However, Suli was nowhere to be found. The investigation team learned he had been missing since the previous night. His residence was empty, his phone inactive. Here's our suspect, Ouedraogo declared. Classic case. Perpetrate the act, then flee. Sankara shook his head. That would be too simplistic. The server is likely no longer among the living. He might have been the instrument, but we need to find the orchestrator behind it. Where do we begin, then? One of his assistants inquired. The server's family, his acquaintances, Sankara instructed. Who did he associate with in recent days? Did he have any unusual expenditures? A new phone? A watch? A vehicle? Was a substantial sum deposited into a bank account? The team moved swiftly. A search of the server's home yielded no valuable possessions, but in a hidden compartment in the bedroom, an envelope containing foreign currency, 10,000 units, was discovered. Evidence, Sankara noted, but we don't know the source. Retrieve the palace security camera footage, Sankara commanded. I want to observe everything from the past week. In the palace's security room, Sankara and his team spent hours meticulously reviewing surveillance footage. They tracked every movement of server Suli. Stop, Sankara suddenly interjected. Last Tuesday, 1432. Suli is conversing with someone in the palace's rear garden. The individual on the screen was Hamidou Savado, the foreign relations advisor. Zoom in, Sankara directed. Savado was handing a small envelope to the server. There's the individual who provided the funds, Ouedraogo stated. Perhaps, Sankara conceded, but I'm not certain he is the one who masterminded the act. Find Savado and bring him in. Savado was located in the west wing of the palace, in his personal office. When he was brought to the interrogation room, he appeared composed. Mr. Savado, Sankara began. What did you discuss with server Suli in the back garden last Tuesday? What? Savado asked, feigning surprise. Oh, I offered him a small token. His mother was unwell. I sought to assist. 10,000 units, Sankara noted, quite a generous contribution. Savado's expression remained impassive. So what? I can do as I please with my own resources. Of course you can, Sankara acknowledged, but the timing is interesting. The server receives funds, then the president falls ill, and the server disappears. Do you have an explanation for this? Savado began to show discomfort. I did not cause any harm, and I am unaware of Suli's whereabouts. Then why did you withdraw 50,000 units from your overseas bank account 2 weeks ago? Sankara inquired, displaying a document. Savado's eyes widened. You investigated my accounts? 3 hours ago, you had a reservation at a hotel in Paris, Sankara continued. You were preparing to depart the country. Savado abruptly stood up. I was merely an intermediary, I swear. Whose intermediary? Sankara asked, his voice even. I cannot disclose, Savado stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. They will bring about my downfall. Sankara leaned forward. Mr. Savado, if President Traore's condition deteriorates further, this will be deemed an act of immense consequence. Chaos will engulf the country, and you will be the primary suspect, facing potential life imprisonment, perhaps even a severe penalty. Now, I ask you one final time. Who commissioned you? Savado remained silent for a while, then surrendered. An official from the French Foreign Ministry. His name is Pierre Dumont. We met at a conference in Paris 2 months ago. He approached me, proposing collaboration. What kind of collaboration? Influencing Burkina Faso's Western policy, preventing President Traore from forging closer ties with other nations, gathering intelligence. And what was your compensation for this? 5,000 units per month, Savado stated. But then they demanded more of me. To cause the president's illness? Sankara concluded. Savado nodded. But not to bring about his end. Just to make him indisposed. The substance wasn't designed to be fatal, I swear. He would be unwell for a few weeks, during which time the Prime Minister would assume temporary administration and finalize certain agreements. Which agreements? Returning resource extraction rights to French companies, renewal of the military base agreement, new economic partnerships. Sankara looked at Savado with a chilling expression. In Suli, where is he? I don't know, Savado said, trembling. I provided him with the substance, and he administered it. After executing the plan, he was meant to escape. He also received compensation. Hours later, Maurice Sankara met with Prime Minister Dio, Security Chief Ouedraogo, and Interior Minister Kabore. He relayed his discoveries. So, the French, Dio mused thoughtfully, they were disturbed by Burkina Faso's new independent stance. Savado has been apprehended, Ouedraogo confirmed, but the true orchestrators are beyond our borders. We've initiated a widespread search for the server, Kabore added, but he may have escaped. He did not escape, Sankara stated definitively. They ensured his silence. They erased the evidence. What course of action should we pursue? Dio asked. Should we disclose this information publicly? Not yet, Sankara advised. First, we should await the president's recovery. And I have a strategy. Sankara proposed a plan to ensnare the French Foreign Ministry official, Pierre Dumont. Savado would convey to Dumont that Traore's condition had worsened significantly and that the Prime Minister had temporarily assumed power. Dumont, believing the opportunity ripe, would travel secretly to Burkina Faso to finalize the agreements, at which point he would be apprehended. A perilous plan, Kabore remarked, his concern evident. But if it succeeds, Sankara asserted, we will unequivocally document the foreign intervention, and President Traore will emerge from this situation stronger. At the hospital, Ibrahim Traore's condition was slowly improving. Doctors reported that the effects of the substance were beginning to diminish. His consciousness was returning intermittently, though he was not yet fully recovered. Sankara visited the hospital twice daily to monitor Traore's progress. On the third day, Traore remained lucid for longer periods and was able to converse with Sankara. How do you feel, Mr. President? Sankara asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. Like I've been struck by a heavy vehicle, Traore replied in a weak voice, but I am still here. Who was responsible? Sankara recounted the events. All the information about server Souli, advisor Savado, and the French official, Dumont. Traore listened in silence. So, they are still attempting to control our nation, he finally said. Our autonomy and rights over our resources trouble them. Mr. President, Sankara began hesitantly, we have a plan to apprehend those who instigated this, but it carries considerable risk. Tell me, Traore urged, a spark of interest igniting in his eyes. Sankara outlined the plan to lure Dumont. They would disseminate misinformation that Traore's condition had significantly deteriorated, even suggesting reports of his passing for a period. This, he explained, would draw out those involved in the conspiracy. Proceed, Traore stated, his voice now resolute. We need to identify all who seek to govern us, who desire to manipulate us. The plan was swiftly put into motion. The next day, the Burkina Faso Ministry of Health announced that President Traore's condition had taken a grave turn. The initial press release stated he was in a critical and unstable state, followed by a second announcement that he had been placed on life support. Savado, from his cell, sent a carefully controlled message to Pierre Dumont, informing him that the situation was more dire than anticipated and that the president was unlikely to endure beyond a few days. Prime Minister Dio has now temporarily assumed the administration, he wrote. He is prepared to sign the agreements. All security units in Burkina Faso were placed on high alert, though this heightened status remained confidential. A special operations team, under Sankara's direct command, was on standby. 2 days later, international radio and television channels broadcast the astonishing news: Burkina Faso President Ibrahim Traore has passed. This was a pre-arranged, false report, but its immediate impact was profound. In the capital, Ouagadougou, thousands poured into the streets, openly displaying their sorrow and anger. The sudden loss of their young leader plunged the entire country into profound grief. Within hours, a diplomat from the French embassy in Ouagadougou entered the country. This was Pierre Dumont, introduced as an assistant, who was scheduled for a protocol condolence meeting with Prime Minister Dio. A special meeting room had been prepared in the Prime Minister's building. Dio, Maurice Sankara, and 2 silent security officers were present when Dumont entered, wearing a facade of solemnity. Mr. Prime Minister, the French diplomat stated, on behalf of the French Republic, I extend our condolences for the loss of President Traore. We stand with you in this trying period. Dio nodded. Thank you, Mr. Dumont. Please, be seated. We have matters to discuss. Dumont cast a suspicious glance at Sankara. This should be a private meeting, should it not? Mr. Sankara is my security advisor, Dio replied smoothly, and our discussions today pertain precisely to security. As you wish, Dumont said, attempting to appear at ease. Mr. Dumont, Dio continued, it is very considerate of you to travel specially from Paris, especially given that you do not hold an official diplomatic role. Dumont's expression shifted. What do you mean? I am a senior diplomat of the French embassy. No, you are not, Sankara interjected, opening a folder. You are an operative of the French Foreign Intelligence Service, conducting covert activities in our country. Dumont's face paled. This is preposterous. Last night, Sankara went on, you engaged in a 20-minute phone conversation with Hamidou Savado. We have recorded your conversation. Sankara pressed a button, and the audio recording began to play. Dumont's voice was clearly audible. Are you certain? Is Traore truly gone? This is excellent news. I am arriving immediately to finalize the agreement. Dumont's face was now completely devoid of color. This could be fabricated. Mr. Dumont, Dio stated in a serious tone, You are charged with the attempted infliction of harm upon a head of state on Burkina Faso territory. Dumont frantically stood up. I possess diplomatic immunity. You cannot touch me. Sankara also rose. You are not a diplomat. You are an intelligence operative, and you are part of an elaborate scheme. At that precise moment, the side door of the room opened, and Ibrahim Traore walked in. His face was still pale, and he stumbled slightly as he moved, but he was present and upright. Dumont was in complete shock. This is impossible. I am more resilient than you anticipated, Mr. Dumont, Traore said in a calm voice. And so is Burkina Faso. Dumont was taken into custody and his activities exposed before the international press. The French ambassador was urgently recalled, compelled to issue a statement. The French government asserted that Dumont had acted independently and did not represent France's official policy, but few found this explanation credible. Ibrahim Traore addressed the public, recounting his experience. He described the incident as an affront to Burkina Faso's independence and sovereignty. This event has demonstrated to us, Traore declared, that independence is not easily attained. We must strive for it daily, at every juncture. But it has also shown that if we identify deception within our own ranks and recognize our genuine allies, no external power can prevail against us. In a decision that surprised many, Traore appointed Maurice Sankara as the national security advisor. This meant bringing back the man he had removed 3 years prior, now placing him in one of the most trusted positions. After the press conference, Traore and Sankara remained alone. Why? Sankara inquired. Why do you place your trust in me? I could have betrayed you. Traore smiled. But you did not. I understood that your animosity towards me was less than your devotion to your country. 6 months after the incident, Burkina Faso was in a stronger position. The foreign military base had been removed from the country, and resource extraction rights had been reorganized. Ibrahim Traore and Maurice Sankara were guiding the country's progress on the path to true autonomy. One evening, standing on the balcony of the presidential palace, Traore turned to Sankara. You know, Maurice, sometimes the most challenging adversaries can become the most effective allies. Sankara nodded thoughtfully. Because a true adversary, at the very least, is straightforward. Their intentions are clear. Precisely, Traore agreed. And now I realize that dismissing you 3 years ago was a misstep. You were simply pursuing a different route, but the objective was identical: Burkina Faso's independence. Perhaps the adversity was a necessary transformation for us, Sankara mused. Sometimes the distinction between peril and resolution is merely a matter of degree. Ibrahim Traore looked at the sun descending on the horizon. And sometimes, the truth itself can be unsettling, but at the same time, it is the only pathway to healing. The two former adversaries now stood side by side, contemplating the future of their nation. The exposed truth had united them, strengthened them, and set their country on a more secure trajectory.